Hello, Internet! Today I take my first steps into the realms of being a real YouTuber by bringing you my first ever list video. So here we go, I hope you enjoy lists. So I thought, since the Isle of Arm has just been released, the expansion pass, and we've had a little bit of time to digest all the new toys that we've got, all the new Pokemon, the new moves, etc. This week there's going to be 3 lists. I hope you're going to enjoy them. But in this list, we are going to be looking at the top 10 newly VGC-Legal Pokemon that are available to us. So obviously the Isle of Armor brought us quite a few more Pokemon. Obviously the 10 Pokemon on this list are not the only viable Pokemon. I'm not saying that. Absolutely, there's way more that goes beyond this. But these, I think, are the 10 best Pokemon for VGC that we can now use because of the expansion. So coming in at, I feel like I'm doing Top of the Pops or something. Coming in at number 10. I'm not going to try and be Tony Blackburn. Number 10 is Alola Marowak. So in 2014 actually, Marowak was not used at all. 2017 is what I'm trying to say. Alola Marowak was used quite a lot. It's the first year that it became legal. And it's funny, isn't it? Because its stats aren't much at all, but with the thick club, it's got an astronomical attack stat, and it hits very, 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 very hard. It's got a decent typing, good offensive typing. Not so good on the defensive side. I guess one of the downsides of the Marowak is that generally, if you're in a Trick Room team, your Trick Room setter will be weak to Ghost and Dark as well, generally. So having your main Trick Room attacker, maybe doubling up on those weaknesses isn't the best. But that aside, Marowak hits very, very, very hard, and one of its abilities, Lightning Rod, I think really puts it into the top 10 of this list. Lightning Rod means that you can protect your Gelatin, protect your normal Slowbro, protect any water or flying or anything that's weak to electric from electric attacks, which is a fantastic utility. You'll know that I like using Raichu mainly for the Lightning Rod. Marowak has that as well, although some people do use the Rockhead ability so they don't get Flare Blitz recoil. But anyway, it's got a base speed, I think, of 45. It's pretty slow, so in Trick Room it can be a big threat. Flare Blitz does a lot of damage. It does get the new ghost move Poltergeist, which is very powerful. It gets a base attack of 110, base power of 110. Although the opponent does have to be holding an item. But out of all the ghosts, Marowak is maybe the one that needed Poltergeist least, since it did already have Shadow Bone. Shadow Bone, maybe a little bit more reliable, is based 85 still, so still does a lot of damage. But generally, you would just see 3 attacks and protect or detect on Marowak. It can Perish Song, so if they've got Gothitelles, if they've got maybe a Gengar on the team, maybe that might give the Perish Song away too. But Boomerang, Rock Slide, and maybe Low Kick if you if you want to live on the wild side and try not low kicking into Dynamax things. It does have some coverage, but just because of its Lightning Rod utility and the sheer pressure it puts on teams, how it does a lot of damage, it outputs a lot. It definitely makes it on this list, number 10. Coming in at number 9 is, and this might be, I don't know, a controversial one maybe. It only is at number 9 on my list, is Urshifu. And I'm putting both Urshifus in here, so, sorry, but, both Urshifus, I know they're very different types, fighting dark and fighting water, but their movesets are pretty similar, and it's only really the typing and a few of their moves that is different. I know that there was a lot of hoo-ha. There was a lot of talking going on about Urshifu back when the expansion first came out, mainly I think because of its ability, Unseen Fist, which really is a very, very good ability. All contact moves basically go through Protect. Now that is a fantastic ability. You would expect all Urshifu really to have close combat, or maybe Drain Punch if they're a slightly bulkier one, maybe with the new Poaching move, which raises your allies' attack and defense. Maybe you could put Drain Punch on that set if you're going a little bit bulky, a bit more supportive. But really, aside from coaching, Urshifu doesn't really have any supporting options, really. So this is why Urshifu is only at number 9 on this list, even though it has got fantastic ability, and it has got fantastic stats as well. Its base speed of 97 puts it faster than Indeedee Male, which you're going to see quite a lot of these days, and will threaten the Water Urshifu as well too with psychic attacks. It's faster than Kingdra in Rain. If Tailwind's up or whatever, it's faster than Excadrill in Sand or Venusaur in Sun. If Tailwind's up, it just hits the speed tier a little bit higher than most of the main threats in the current format. So it has got a great speed, and it does have some decent coverage moves as well too. Wicked Blow and Surging Strikes, depending on your typing, I guess you would have that on there. Although they do always critical hit, they're not the most powerful moves. So, they do a fair amount of damage, but they're not, super broken or anything like that. You would normally see Aerial Ace on Urshifu as well too, just because Max Airstream is very good to have. Flying coverage, to hit something like Amoonguss is very, very good. But just to raise your speed and your ally speed is very good as well too. You might see Iron Head or Thunder Punch for coverage. You might see U-Turn if maybe someone's going to be using a banded Urshifu, which I can see doing pretty well actually with the Unseen Fist, banded Unseen Fist going through Protect. I think that could be very good actually. But just because Urshifu I think is quite one-dimensional, it's only at number 9 on this list. I think Urshifu, since it hasn't really got that many supportive options, it is going to be a little bit predictable. And although it is a good Pokemon, undeniably so, it's only at number 9 on this list. So, coming in at number 8 on this list of newly VGC-Legal Pokemon from the Isle of Armor is Porygon-Z. Now, this is a Pokemon that I actually haven't really used much at all myself, if at all, really, to be honest. But I do appreciate it is very, very, very good now, especially now with Dynamaxing. It is very good. It did see some use back in 2017 and 18, I think, when Z moves were allowed, because with Z conversion, it could get +1 to all of its stats and make it a very oppressive threat and quite bulky as well. +1 to every stat. It can't do that now, but and you can see its moves are quite limited as well too. But I have put it on this list at number 8 because it has got a pretty good speed. Not quite as fast as Urshifu, but it is faster than most things. And with Max Strike, it can do a lot of business, especially with this adaptability ability. You might have Hyper Beam on there, so you've got really, really powerful Max Strikes. You might just go with Tri-Attack so that you've got a bit more of a reliable attack when you're not Dynamax. But either way, a Max Strike is going to be very powerful coming from Porygon-Z. And we were saying with Urshifu, people use like Aerial Ace and Bounce and stuff on Pokemon so that they can use the Max Airstream, because that is such a good utility. One of the best, if not the best, utility from a Max move. Max Strike does the same essentially, kind of, but to the opponent, it lowers their speeds by 1 stage. So if you've got three turns of Max Striking, that's lowering your opponent's speed, which is helping your partner as well, helping Porygon if it wasn't faster than whatever they had out, and it kind of deters them from switching perhaps as well too, because maybe if they have something that can threaten Porygon, a Terrakion, a Cobalion, whatever, they'll not really want to come in on a Max Strike, even though they can take the attack, but they'll then be a -1 speed and maybe a threat of attack from your partner or whatever. So it is very impressive just to keep spamming at Max Strikes. And I know I was saying with Urshifu that one directional and all the rest of it, but I think that the one direction that Porygon-Z goes in is just a little bit better. I think you could see Nasty Plot on a Porygon 2 set, but and it does get Trick Room. I think it gets Ally Switch as well too, so there are a few other moves that you could maybe see on Porygon-Z, but I think these are probably the most likely moves that you're going to see on Porygon-Z. But moving swiftly on then, number 7 on the list is a Pokemon that I have a lot of experience. One of my favourite Pokemon, actually. Number 7 is Azumarill. Good old Azumarill. Good old blue bouncing bunny, which actually can bounce. I suppose Azumarill, especially the Azumarills that I've been using. I pioneered the Belly Drum Aquajet set with Raichu back in 2014. And that only came about really because when X and Y came out, Raichu got a lot of buffs. It was made faster. I think it got a few other buffs as well too. And I thought, yes, let's try and pair it with Azumarill. Let's see what we can do here. And it was very, very successful. But I don't think the Belly Drum Aquajet set is necessarily going to be the best to go with in this format, although I do still think you'll see quite a few of those around. But Azumarill doesn't have to use that set. I mean, even if it has got Belly Drum on the set, you don't have to Belly Drum. You could still, Dynamax it and Starfall things or whatever. If you don't have Protect, you might have an extra move. You can still, you could have Bounce, for example. You can still do things with it. But I think Assault Vest, which has been used in the past, is a pretty good option for Azumarill as well too, because it is a bulky Pokemon. A bit like Marowak, actually. It hasn't got the biggest attack stat, but Marowak with its thick club, Azumarill with its huge power ability, its attack stat is doubled. It's massive. It's got a huge attack stat. It does a lot of damage when it wants to, Azumarill. So yeah, you don't have to run you don't have to run the Belly Drum set. You could go with Liquidation and play rough. We did see Superpower in the past. I'm not sure if we'll see that too much now. Bounce potentially to increase your speed as well. But it isn't even locked into doing these. It's got more options as well. It can have Sap Sipper to make it immune to grass. If they've got Gothitelles on the team, Gengars on the team, maybe you can identify actually this Azumarill might have Perish Song as well too. And with Perish Song, a bit like Politoed actually also gets Perish Song. Politoed and Azumarill, both very bulky Pokemon and can stall out turns, essentially. Azumarill is slower than Politoed as well, so if you get, a few Protects, if you're the slowest Pokemon on the field at the end, even if you're perished as well, you could still be winning the game potentially. So Azumarill is quite a diverse Pokemon, actually, even though, I've always stuck to using Belly Drum Aquajet. It can do a lot of things, especially when people are going to be experimenting with Urshifu and things like that. Fairy is a very good offensive typing. A good, teams always appreciate a good water type on their team as well too. So, as much as I love Azumarill, it is only number 7 on this list. I don't think it's maybe as good as it used to be in general, but I think it is still a very, very, very good Pokemon. But coming in at number 6 on this list of newly available VGC Pokemon, we have a Pokemon actually that has been around for a long time, but never really saw much usage, and that is Cobalion. Now, this is an interesting Pokemon. It's one of the 3 Musketeer Pokemon with Terrakion and Virizion. Virizion and Terrakion both saw, a lot of use, especially Terrakion. Cobalion never really saw any use, but it's made it onto this list really because of the brand new Dynamax mechanic. Now, Cobalion, just like its Musketeer partners, has got the Justified ability, so paired with something like a Whimsicott or a Dragapult with a Beat Up or any other dark attack really, even just a partner with Sucker Punch can help, can't it? You can raise your attack stat, do a lot of damage. Cobalion has got a pretty decent typing as well. And so with its Dynamax, it can take a lot of hits. It is a very big offensive threat, but although Cobalion has been able to bounce, in past generations, the fact that bounce is now a completely viable move makes Cobalion a really big threat, because if you do say, get a beat up off, for example, if you then bounce, if you max Airstream, Dynamax and use max bounce, then you're going to be at +1 speed. You're going to be faster than even most Scarfed Pokemon. Cobalion is base 108 speed. It's a pretty big threat, Cobalion. The only reason why it maybe isn't higher on this list is because without the beat up, without the justified boosts, Cobalion isn't really much of a threat. It doesn't do a whole lot. It does feel like it is a lot more reliant on the beat up than maybe some of the other justified Pokemon that you could use, like maybe Arcanine or Lucario or maybe Terrakion, or even Virizion perhaps. But yeah, you'd normally see Close Combat, maybe Sacred Sword on it, Iron Head for stab and to increase your defense perhaps as well too. Definitely bounce to the max Airstream. Stone Age adds some coverage for it, to hit something like a Charizard, perhaps other fire type Pokemon. Quick Guard you might see on Cobalion to protect your Whimsicott from fake outs, that kind of thing. You could maybe see Coaching on it, that new move, if it wasn't such an offensive Cobalion. And Protect is quite common on it as well too. So even though we've not really seen Cobalion do anything really in past years, I think this is the format where Cobalion can potentially do something, and it is all because of the max airstream. It's all because it's got bounce. It can be a +4 attack, but if you're slower than something that can knock you out, then so what? Bounce makes Cobalion a really big threat. So we're pretty much halfway through this list now. Hope you've been enjoying it so far. We're going to be moving on to the number 5 on this list of newly VGC-Legal Pokemon, and it is another Pokemon which I have a lot of experience with, actually. It is good old Volcarona. Volcarona, I think, the 5th best Pokemon that you can use from the new Pokemon that we've got now. Now, Volcarona, obviously, the ×4 weakness to rock aside, that is its big weak point, obviously. Volcarona is a fantastic Pokemon. It is, I guess, like a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, or at least it's got the base stats of one. It has got a lot of stat points, and it is very versatile as well, too. We've had a few Pokemon on this list so far who, like Porygon-Z, like Urshifu, who I felt a little bit one-dimensional, but do their jobs, pretty well. Volcarona is, maybe two-dimensional. It's got two main ways that it can operate, and both are very, very, very good. The main way, obviously, is to Quiver Dance, which raises your special attack, your special defense, your speed, which makes it even bulkier, even faster, makes it hit even harder, obviously. You'd normally see that with Heat Wave and maybe... they don't all have Protect. They might have Protect, they might not. But they might have Bug Buzz, they might have Giga Drain, they might have Hurricane, since, you want to maybe be increasing your speed even more there as well. The Quiver Dance set is always going to be very good. Wide Guard isn't really as good as it used to be, so the combination of, Hitmontop and Volcarona, or any kind of Wide Guard and Volcarona, isn't as foolproof as it used to be, since, if you're sitting in front of a Tyranitar, you can't just Wide Guard all day and its Rock Slides, because it might just Dynamax and Max Rock for you and squash your poor little bug there. But I think that set, the Quiver Dance set, is still going to be very good. Now, I've used in 2016 Worlds. Obviously, I've used a completely different Volcarona as well too. That one had Red Card, but Rage Powder, any Pokemon with Redirection have got a lot of use. Redirection isn't that common in this format, since like Lucario can't get it, I guess. I suppose we have got Amoonguss back. We have got Tangela and Tangrowth back. We haven't got Vivillon anymore, but we've still got Butterfree. So Rage Powder, maybe not as common as it used to be, but anyway, any Pokemon with Redirection is very good. Volcarona can be a very bulky Pokemon. If you invest everything into physical bulk, it can take lots and lots of attacks, especially with maybe Chartiberry, for example. There you might see Overheat on that set. You might see Struggle Bug, perhaps, which I've not put on this list, which it didn't have the last time we could use it. Which is a bit like a bug version of Snarl, almost. I think it's 100% accurate, actually, but it always lowers their special attack stats. Protect, you'd normally see on that set as well, too. But just because Volcarona has got two very, very, very viable modes of operation, I think Volcarona is definitely well worth being at number 5 on this list. So... We're getting to the top end of this list now. So moving on to number 4, we have Cobalion's brother, in a way. We have Terrakion. Now, I know a lot of people, I suppose a little bit like Urshifu, people were, had a lot to say about Urshifu being released and how good it would be. Whenever Terrakion is allowed in the format, there's a lot of opinions. People always have something to say about Terrakion. Especially because, even from, when it was first released, alongside Whimsicott back in 2011, the combination of Beat Up and Justified has been very, very good with Terrakion, like I've been saying with Cobalion. Now we've got more Beat Up options, like we've got Dragapult is the main example, can beat up. There are a few other things that can beat up as well now as well. You could even see it with, Weavile or Sneasel, perhaps, other Pokemon like that can do other things. For example, they can Surf to help a Colossal. Although if you'd have a Terrakion and a Colossal on the same team, I don't know. But anyway, Terrakion, has the same threat as Cobalion. Unfortunately, out of the three Musketeers, Terrakion is the one that cannot bounce. If Terrakion also had bounce, then yes, it would be very, 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 very good. It can't bounce though, unfortunately. But you'd normally see close combat. Rock Slide is not quite as powerful as Stone Edge, but obviously in doubles, it's nice to spam Rock Slide sometimes and fish with flinches in sticky situations. Although you might go with Stone Edge. It could have Earthquake or maybe Stomping Tantrum to raise your special defense, maybe Iron Head to raise your defense stat. If you're going to be Dynamaxing a Terrakion, just like with Cobalion, you can go with Quick Guard as well to protect you from your Whimsicott from Fake Out, protect your Terrakion from Talonflame Brave Birds, perhaps if you really want to as well too, or just use Protect. But Terrakion is higher on this list than Cobalion, just because Terrakion does not rely necessarily on the justified boosts as much as Cobalion does. I've used Terrakion in the past with Sword Stance. I've used Terrakion in the past with Substitute as well. It doesn't necessarily need the justified boosts. It has got a very high attack stat anyway, unlike Cobalion. Close combat can one-shot things weak to it. Stone Edge, Rock Slide potentially can one-shot things that are weak to it. Poor Volcarona, who as we've had on the last slide. Butterfree, things like that. Things that are very weak to rock attacks. So, Terrakion is always a very good Pokemon. I do think people assess it as more of a threat than it actually is, because the lead of Terrakion and Whimsicott or whatever is actually quite easy to get around, and people maybe don't necessarily realize that straight away. But at the same time, a well-placed Terrakion is very good, and especially if it has justified boosts, it is even better. So I guess that's a distinction, I think, between Terrakion and Cobalion. Cobalion can bounce, which is very good, can max Airstream. Terrakion doesn't necessarily need you to use it with justified. It is very good anyway. And, actually, just, before I move on, good fighting type Pokemon, good rock type Pokemon are quite rare in this format. There is Urshifu now, there's, maybe Conkeldurr, there's not many other decent fighting type Pokemon, and I know that there's a Stonjourner subtly in the background of all this. Sorry, Stonjourner, but there's not a lot of a good rock type Pokemon. Obviously, there's Stonjourner, which is clearly the best, but there's Tyranitar, there's not many others. I mean, there are a few, but there's not that many good ones. And Terrakion kind of fills that void of good rock type Pokemon, good fighting type Pokemon. But we really are getting to the top end of this list now. We are going to be coming into number 3 with Porygon-Z. Now, this is a Pokemon that I haven't used a lot in the modern era, to be completely honest, but a very, very select few people will remember. If anyone watched me play a little bit in the early stages of 2013, which was a long time ago now, way before I did YouTube, so none of this went on YouTube or anything. I did have a hard Trick Room team with a Porygon-Z on it, and no one really used Porygon-Z back then. It was one of those sort of fringe picks that only the wild people would use. But I recognised that with the Eviolite, Porygon-Z would be very, very bulky, and aside from something like a Taunt, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a Trick Room off, really. And we've been playing around with Dusclops in the format loads, which is the other main Eviolite user. Dusclops is the other almost impossible to one-shot Trick Room setter. Very frustrating to play against. Porygon-Z is essentially the normal type version of that. Porygon-Z is almost impossible to one-shot, especially because Max, fighting, its only weakness, Max fighting, the Dynamax fighting attack is not very powerful, unlike, Max Ghost or Max Dark could, potentially one-shot Dusclops with some boosts. You really need to be, boosting a close combat, really, to be threatening Porygon-Z here. Porygon-Z doesn't have as many support options as Dusclops. Dusclops can do a lot of things. It can Pain Split and Will-O-Wisp and Taunt, Bulldoze perhaps for weakness policies. It can do a lot of things. Porygon-Z hasn't got as many options. There is Ally Switch, which you might see on there, but generally a Porygon-Z is always going to have Trick Room. It's always going to have Recover, and will have maybe 2 attacks, or maybe 1 attack and a different attack. But sometimes you might see Foul Play if that's its only attack. Sometimes maybe Tri Attack if that's its only attack. Maybe you might see Ice Beam and Thunderbolt together, because the combination of those two cover pretty much everything almost. Maybe Shadow Ball, perhaps. But I think Ice Beam and Thunderbolt are probably going to be the main combination of attacks, although Tri Attack has seen quite a lot of use. The Porygon-Z might not have as many supportive options as Dusclops, but it is more of an offensive threat, especially if it downloads a special attack boost. Its Ice Beams and Thunderbolts actually can start doing some damage. So, I guess the main downside to Porygon-Z is a bit, it's a bit more predictable, I guess. It is more predictable than something like Dusclops. It has got less supportive moves, but at the same time, it is still very good at what it does. Like, it's going to have Eviolite, it's going to have Trick Room. So if you've got Taunt and they can't redirect that, you know that you basically can sort of shut it down. Well, Porygon-Z is so bulky, it is so good that it will fit on, pretty much any team. Not necessarily a team that relies on Trick Room. It can go on almost any team. If you played 2017, you'll know how good Porygon-Z is. And it's just that bulky. It's just that good, really. But Porygon-Z is at number 3 on this list. Next, we are going to be moving to number 2 on this list. What do you think it could be? Well, I will show you. I have put Talonflame at number 2 on this list. Now, Talonflame is a Pokemon that, when it was first released, back in 2014, when X and Y came out, its Gale Wings made it a very, very, very oppressive Pokemon. I think, Kangaskhan aside, I think Talonflame kind of ruined VGC-14. I really didn't like playing against it at all, just because you could literally spam, Banded Brave Birds, Life Orb Brave Birds. You had to EV for stuff like that, or run, Quick Guards and, stuff like that. You had to have an answer for Talonflame. Talonflame is maybe not quite as good as it used to be, but, quite strangely, my appreciation for Talonflame has gone up through the years, despite, it being nerfed a few times, I guess. Gale Wings now only gives your flying moves priority if you are at 100% HP, which means your recoil moves, your main attacks of Flare Blitz and Brave Bird are going to be working against that. It means that generally you can maybe only get 1 priority move off, unless you Dynamax it maybe and go for a Max Airstream there. But Talonflame is quite diverse as well too. But we have seen some in the past with Will-O-Wisp, with Taunt, with stuff like that too. But I've put Talonflame at a hefty number 2 on this list, just because I think this format has been very, very centered around Whimsicott. And, Whimsicott can use its pranks to Tailwind. Whimsicott essentially has had the monopoly on Tailwind in this whole format. Especially because it gets, a +1 priority Tailwind. But now Talonflame is here to do it as well, and maybe do it better. Talonflame, if you go Jolly or Timid, because I've seen like 1 Talonflame, but like Overheat and Hurricane it gets now. You can go Special, I suppose. But if you plus Speed Nature, you are going to be faster than Whimsicott, which means you can Tailwind before they can Tailwind. And with the new move, Dual Wing Beat, which I have seen a few of, you can potentially, if you've got a boosting item on your Talonflame, it does need a boosting item since you need to be plus Speed Nature, you can one-shot Whimsicott through its Focus Sash. So with an Expert Belt on it, with a Life Orb, if you want to go that route on it, Dual Wing Beat can essentially just shut down Whimsicott. It can get rid of it before it does anything, which is fantastic. It really is brilliant to have another answer to Whimsicott, since I think they made Whimsicott quite hard to deal with this format. Even Pokemon like, Galarian Weezing, which, stopped its prankster, I think that's pretty cool, but at the end of the day, +1 speed, it still speed ties with Whimsicott. It's not like a reliable answer to it. I think they made it a little bit difficult to deal with, and now with Talonflame here, it is so much easier to deal with, really. Talonflame does the Tailwinding better, it threatens Whimsicott itself, and Talonflame is a little bit less of a potential dead weight that Whimsicott can be sometimes as well too. Talonflame can do some damage. Flare Blitz and Brave Bird even though Talonflame hasn't got the highest attack stat, everyone knows, Talonflame's got a lower attack stat than Amoonguss, blah, blah, blah. It can still do a lot of damage just because they are powerful. They are powerful attacking moves. Taunt, I quite like on Talonflame as well. Quick Guard is common-ish on Talonflame as well. Protect can be seen on Talonflame as well, but Talonflame is number 2 on this list just because it gives a much-needed extra tailwind option for a team. And, good fire types have been reasonably hard to come by. In the past you've been stuck with either Incineroar or maybe Arcanine or maybe Charizard. Although we have got Volcarona now, we have got Talonflame also, which I think is a brilliant Pokemon. I think it's very, very good and makes team building options a little bit freer. You're not necessarily stuck to requiring a Whimsicott if you want to match with a Whimsicott or whatever. So I think Talonflame number 2. I think we're going to see a lot of it. It's not as good as it used to be, just because of the the nerf, if you want to call it that, to Gale Wings. But I appreciate the nuance around using Talonflame now, of keeping the priority intact, keeping your health at 100% HP. But that's Talonflame. That's number 2. We've been through this list. Before we get to number 1, you can have your guesses. I'm sure you know what it's going to be. I've mentioned it enough times. Before we get to number 1, I'm just going to go through just a few honourable mentions. So these didn't quite make it on the list. Magnezone is a pretty cool Pokemon. There's not too many electric Pokemon going around at the moment. Steel types are always pretty good, especially now that Psychic Spam is becoming a thing again. So Magnezone to resist that is pretty nifty. Scizor, I've always liked Scizor, I'm sure you know that, but I suppose a little bit like Azumarill's Belly Drum and Aqua Jet strategy is a little bit archaic now, you could say. Scizzor's Swords Dance and Bullet Punch strategy is not going to be as effective, again because of all the psychic training that's going to be going around. Although with the right team, you can definitely get around that. And Scizor, I do absolutely believe that Scizor can be a big threat, but it's not as easy to use, not as freely usable as it used to be in the past. Galarian Slowbro, I do think is an interesting option here. The Shell Sidearm is an interesting move. It can be used to either Trick Room itself and then be an offensive threat in Trick Room, or it can be used as your Trick Room attacker in a way, since it has got a unique typing of Poison and Psychic. If you go with a Dusclops or whatever, you can Bulldoze, you can Weakness Policy your Slowbro, and do a lot of damage that way. Slowbro is very bulky, so it is very difficult to take care of, even though its typing maybe does give it a few more weaknesses. And its ability is a bit gimmicky, but I mean, who can imagine watching, World's top 8 or whatever, and they've got a Slowbro and they win the game 3 because of the quick durability. That would send a few people a bit wild, wouldn't it? So I can see why people might want to be tempted to use it, but it doesn't quite make the list. And I put Politoed and Kingdra on here as well too, since they are now legal. But I've never been a big fan of Rain personally myself, but I think that strategies that revolve around a weather in general are nowhere near as good as they used to be, just because weather is a lot more changeable than it used to be. A Dynamax fire attack, there you go, you got a Sun Up. Dynamax Rockfall, you got the Sand Up. You can't rely on, in the past, especially in the far past, in 2012 and 13, you bring Politoed out, your Rain lasts forever. Rain used to be a very, very, very good, very oppressive strategy, but it's just not anymore. And, there's lots of ways around, lots of ways to change the weather. Tailwinds boost, with the priority, means that, even on turn 1, your Kingdra, if you lead it, for example, can potentially be threatened by things. Although Kingdra has got the boost of learning Hurricane now, I don't think, although these two, I'm not saying they're bad, definitely, I do think these two Pokemon are nowhere near as good as they used to be. Politoed has got all of its, past move tutor moves back as well, like Icy Wind and Helping Hand, Perish Song. So Politoed is the best Politoed it can be in this format. It has got all of its moves, and it is a very good Pokemon. Obviously, switching in on eruptions and stuff, it's always going to be very, very good, but just not quite in the top 10 of this list. So, here we go. We've been through the list. Number 1 on this list. I do think, if you haven't got it already, if you're took a moment to think to yourselves, I think you would definitely be able to get it. Obviously, it is Amoonguss. Now, I love and hate Amoonguss at the same time. I love using it. I think it is a very, very good Pokemon. Not only is this, I think, the best Pokemon that is now usable in VGC, I think it is one of the best Pokemon in the entire format. Any format that Amoonguss is in, I think forces, it kind of centralizes in some way team building around it. When you are team building, you have to think, oh, how can I beat Amoonguss and Tyranitar? How can I beat Amoonguss and Azumarill? How can I beat, Amoonguss and Talonflame? How can I beat, Amoonguss and Trick Room? There's so many things that you have to take Amoonguss into account for when building your team. So that forces people to run Taunt. It forces people to run big fire attacks, big flying attacks that can demolish Amoonguss, even though it can run Ockerberry and Cobaberry and and stuff like that as well too. Run people, force people to run safety goggles, as I did last week with that Talonflame. It is a very oppressive Pokemon in that way, and I know that Amoonguss is not as good as it was back in 2011, as it was in 2012 or 13 as well too, just because we have got terrains. But even back in 2018, when Tapu Koko and Tapu Fini were literally everywhere, Amoonguss was still a very, very good Pokemon. Obviously, there's ways to change the terrain, and now Koko and Fini, they're not around, so we're not going to see those two terrains as much as before. But even still, there are more ways to change the terrain now or get rid of the terrain. I think even if it's not sporing, even if it's not just spamming spore and everything, it is another redirector, and that really is the main job of Amoonguss, just to rage powder. It's a very bulky Pokemon that rage powders, and it really is that frustrating. It really is that annoying to deal with. But okay, you can use it to support your setup. You can also use it to, as like a kind of soft Trick Room check. Although, since in Trick Room, Amoonguss will generally be going before a lot of things. But, Dusclops is slower and can maybe taunt it. Hatterene exists now as well, too, which is a little bit slower than Amoonguss. And, maybe in terrain can one-shot Amoonguss as well, too. Maybe, I've not done the calculation, you never know, Max Mindstorm in terrain could one-shot Amoonguss through the Piappa Berry, perhaps. Not Piappa Berry, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Is it Piappa Berry? The Psychic one, you know what I mean. So, yeah, I think Amoonguss, any format it's in, it does kind of centralize team building around it, and that's not going to be any different now. If you've started playing VGC in the era when Amoonguss has not been legal, get used to seeing it. It is a very, very, very good Pokemon. Generally, on every Amoonguss, you will see Spore and Rage Powder, and generally Protect as well, although some don't have Protect. And normally the fourth slot is one of the attacking moves. Normally either Sludge Bomb or Giga Drain, although Foul Play can be used, Clay Smog can be used if you really have trouble with, Snorlax or, things that do set up like that. And a little buff for Amoonguss, it does get Pollen Puff now, which is quite a powerful bug attack, although it doesn't get a stab on it. It can still do a decent amount of damage to like Rillaboom and, stuff like that, I suppose. But it's got the added bonus of if you target your partner with it, you gain 50% of your HP back as well too. So I've not tried that myself yet, but I think Pollen Puff could be pretty good on Amoonguss as well too. On the Pokemon that is already very, very, very good. So there you go. That's my list. I've been going on for quite a while now, haven't I? Actually, quite a bit longer than I thought. I just looked at my recording. I'm at 39 minutes pretty much. How did that happen? Who knows? But anyway, I guess I just like to talk about Pokemon. So I'll just quickly go through the list again. Sorry, I thought this was going to take like 10 minutes. So number 10. So again, these are the top 10 Pokemon, in my opinion, top 10 Pokemon that are now legal in VGC from the Isle of Armor expansion. Number 10, Alolan Marowak. Number 9, the Urshifus. Number 8, Porygon-Z. Number 7, Azumarill. Number 6, Cobalion. Number 5, Volcarona. Number 4, Terrakion. Number 3, Porygon-Z. Number 2, Talonflame. And I think absolutely the best Pokemon now usable, or newly usable now in VGC, is Amoonguss. So, what did you think to my list? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. I'm quite interested to know what you think about this. This is the first list I've ever done. I hope you've liked it. But goodbye for now. Thank you for watching.